I think that you have always really, really wanted a relationship with your brother that you have never had before, because I don't think that he feels the same like need to have a relationship with a little brother that you're so desperately searching for. And the amount of times that I have watched you from the sidelines when you're showing your brother these things that you're doing, or you're like, and I know how desperately you're trying to get that approval, or that like, dude, that's so great. Like, look at you, look at what you're doing, look at what you've done. And it just doesn't feel like you ever gotten that.
We used to be kids. Now we're not. Something happened in between. This is the Broken Youth Club.
We had like put up this thing asking people if they had any like questions for us or whatever. And someone asked something along the lines of like, how did we decide to do this and be so vulnerable with strangers?
Yeah.
And I think for us, a lot of it was coming off of like, we are parents, and now like our kids are getting older and we're getting in these different seasons. And it feels like we start to parent the way that we were parented. And then it's like, oh, this doesn't feel good, or, oh, I definitely don't want to go this route. And I think the more that we kind of dug into that, it was like, I think maybe we should be talking about why we don't want to parent that way, or what our experiences were.
I think it's realizing that you're, like we were presented more with like some sort of template. Like I had a template that I was shown, you had a template that you were shown, and we can build off of that. But there are definitely moments where you realize, oh, I can change this aspect or this one or whatever.
Yeah. And it reminded me of an email that we got really early on that a guy kind of gave a lot of his story and then spoke to ways that he felt he was treating these kids in his life. So I thought maybe that would be a good one to pull from.
Yeah.
It is a lengthier email. And again, I just don't feel like there are parts of it that I really want to cut out. I think it's important to kind of show where maybe his anger came from and what he's referencing towards the end.
Yeah.
But because this is a long email, I'm going to try really hard not to stutter through it.
Hey, I think you did great on that.
Thank you.
One.
I'm going to try really hard. But,
much better than I can do. Listen, I like to read, but I've always had a problem with speaking like reading aloud. But then I don't know if it's my ADHD or what, but even when I'm reading a book, I have to like reread the same sentences over and over. And it's this like, if you say there's, 20 sentences on a page, I can go 1, 2, and then 2, 3, 4. And then I have to go 3, 4, 5, 4, 4. It's like, I have to keep going back because I already forget what I just fucking read by the period.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're here and can read in place of me. I'm sure I will, at times, but it makes me go like, oh, here we go.
Yeah. A side note also, I literally don't know what it is about us sitting in these chairs where my nose immediately starts dripping.
Dude, me too.
Immediately.
I feel like I'm very nasally. I don't know if it's because I'm leaning back or if it's because we have the in-ears that are blocking some of the pressure or what.
Yeah, maybe that is what it is.
Maybe you can pull one out a little bit.
Then I'm going to be fucking with it the whole episode.
Oh, okay.
Man, I feel so
We can try to get,
drippy.
over ears or just not at all. I mean, we don't necessarily need them. Is it just better to hear?
Yeah. Okay. Well,
it's more intimate.
We'll see what happens there. But, okie dokie.
All right, have at it.
Mm-hmm. Apologies in advance for potential length and disarray of this email. I'm typing on my phone, and after 2 long and stressful days at Disneyland with my wife and her sister and niece, use as much or as little as you want. I have a very complicated way I remember my relationship with my dad. I spent a lot of my life being terrified of him because of years of physical and emotional abuse. And in my late teens, leading up to him passing weeks after my 21st birthday, I felt sorry for not being able to know the version of him my older siblings kept talking about. Quote, he changed after you were born, they kept telling me. I'm assuming because me and my siblings after me were never planned, but I don't know. The main thing I remember is the hitting and the yelling, which was almost constant. My dad was bipolar, and looking back at things through the lens of my current knowledge, he was probably on the autism spectrum. Not saying that either of those are excuses for how he treated me growing up, just saying it adds context as to how he always seemed bad with handling his relationships with other people. He was very much a, quote, do what I say when I say it or else type of dad when I was a kid. And I'm sure you can imagine how swell that worked out for me being ADHD and autistic. He constantly would hit me and berate me every time I got distracted when I was supposed to be cleaning my room or doing my homework. I remember one time I told my mom I couldn't finish my math homework one night and that I would ask the math teacher for help with it. But the next morning when my dad found out I didn't finish my math homework, he said I was being lazy and a liar. Quote, and there's nothing worse in this world to me than a liar who's lazy. Before punching me in the face so hard he dislocated my jaw and then proceeded to take my brothers to school and didn't let me go to school for a few days until the bruise on my face went away. Eventually, the beatings got worse and worse, but he eventually just decided to not care and would let me go to school with the bruises since he knew nobody would report him. It was only after I was in high school that he stopped hitting me and started talking to me like an adult and a person he had respect for. But I'm pretty sure I know why he suddenly flipped, and it was fear. I was bullied a lot in school, all ages, and in high school I was bullied to the point where the school literally had me on a list of potential school shooters. And when they proceeded to tell me that I was the most at-risk person on said list, I remember I got home from school one day with no backpack, and when my dad asked me what happened, it had been stolen by my bullies, and they literally pinned me down and ripped up all of my notes and textbooks and then burned it while all making me watch. I was already in a great mood when I got home. He slammed me into the wall, and apparently the look I gave him convinced him that I was going to kill him in his sleep because he never laid his hands on me again after that. Going into the end of high school and starting college, I started to bond with my dad over our mutual love of anime and movies, and it felt like I finally was starting to have a relationship with him, only for him to get cancer and die slowly over a year and a half. I never fully got closure with my dad before he passed, which has always kind of fucked with me. I always wanted to ask him why he treated my older siblings, and even my younger ones, better than me, why he always seemed to hate me more, but it never happened. I also noticed that breaking the cycle of abuse is difficult, something I'm learning on this trip to Disneyland with my wife and her sister and niece. We don't have any children, and I don't really have any experience with children at all. And it's honestly scaring me how easily I started saying things my dad used to say to me when I would whine about being tired or sore, and threatening to beat them if they keep complaining. I always swore I would never be like my dad. But after only a handful of hours with the children, I turned into my dad, down to yelling so much my voice blew out. So yeah, breaking cycles is hard.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I resonate with a lot of that, obviously.
Yeah.
The first thing I actually thought was the inability to fully appreciate any closure.
Mm-hmm.
And I instantly thought of my sister, and I know her struggles with, because, we've talked about Darren now in a few episodes.
Mm-hmm.
My sister is, technically, she's my half sister.
Right.
But the way we've always lived is that doesn't compute, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. In my eyes, I have a brother and I have a sister. That's just the way it is.
Right.
So we share Darren, or I don't share any relationship other than Darren being my step parent, but we have the same mom.
Right.
So I know her relationship to Darren was different than mine, obviously, in many different ways. Being a girl, being younger than me, having, more time with him on the latter end of his life, because by the time he got even close to sick, I was in college, and I was like, hey, don't contact me,
Right.
But excuse me, I do know for Stormy that she has struggled with, trying there at the end to try to make it work or have some sort of closure there, knowing, hey, this is kind of our last bit together. And yeah, I know she struggles with the fact that he is no longer here. He was abusive, and he was in a lot of ways terrible, but at the end of the day, it's still your parent. And so the confusion there is totally understandable.
Well, and we don't really know or understand the ins and outs of her relationship with your dad or with her dad.
Right.
But even I think knowing the extent of how her dad treated you or treated your brother, I think that would be a really difficult thing to maneuver. You know, we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know how he was with her. But do you feel like you needed closure with him? Because I feel like whenever we learned that he was sick, there wasn't a lot of emotion there. There wasn't.
Nope. I feel like I struggled because like right after the
I think the last time you talked to him was at Stormy's wedding, right?
Yeah. So I was gonna say, I think right after high school, obviously I went to college. He reached out. I think it was my freshman year, and he was like, he would pull this thing. He's like, well, you know, I love you, Log. I think about you a lot, and I for the longest time I would feel this like, I love you too. You know, it's just like you had to push it out of there.
Yeah.
Because I grew up having to say that, basically.
Yeah.
And I remember then I was like, thanks for calling. And I remember specifically not saying I love you. And like, okay, that's what that feels like.
Yeah.
And he tried again, like another time or two or whatever. But I stopped. I ignored his calls. And then I remember there was a graduation, I think. I'm trying to remember who's it. What? Maybe it was Stormy's graduation.
Yeah, that would be the thought.
Yeah, duh. And I remember him commenting like on my tattoos and like having this feeling of like, well, buddy, you have no place to be talking to me right now.
Right.
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
You ain't, so shut up.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, at Stormy's wedding was the last time I had seen or talked to him. And it was just this uncomfortable thing. I remember having this like, I don't want this to come off as like conceited or any other way, but this very human feeling of I'm telling him my accomplishments, and they are some of them are even better than I wanted them to be when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to say that to him made me have this like not sinister, but this like delicious delight of being able to say, in spite of you, I did really well.
Yeah.
And
that you were doing perfectly fine without him.
Exactly. But throwing it back to the story, I very much resonate with the fact that I catch myself doing things that very much are him.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't... The amount of time that I had with my dad was so, abbreviated.
Right.
And spread out that I don't know how many like parental habits I developed from him.
Mm-hmm.
I obviously have like humor habits and then facial tics and all the silly things that you can look at me and go like, oh, Jesus, that's Joe.
Yeah.
But as far as like parental habits, again, I feel like I got more of the Darren side, unfortunately.
Right.
And a lot of that is I do have, I can have a temper.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when I'm stressed or tired, I'm very quick to like lose my cool.
Mm-hmm.
And all right, everybody, like, hey, I need everyone to be quiet.
Yeah.
You go to your room. You go to your room. You watch your iPad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go smoke.
Yeah.
And or just the way sometimes of the tone in my voice when I'll talk to like specifically Oliver, and then I'll catch myself being like, oh no, like I am literally Darren talking to me.
Yeah.
And this feels terrible. And then I'll overcorrect by then like trying to do something with Oliver or something special. I don't know.
Yeah.
I always feel bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do see those things. And then, even though it's not genetic, but the drinking habits, dude, as soon as I started hiding stuff,
right,
or putting it like under a chair in here, or purposefully putting it in a place where you couldn't find it, is like, holy shit.
Yeah.
This is a carbon copy of what he would do.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like also when it comes to the alcohol stuff, there was a lot of like, yeah, I drink a lot or I'm drunk a lot, but you weren't him. You weren't like mean and abusive and stuff like that.
No.
So
just
I think
on the aspect of hiding it.
Yeah. So I think that like for you were always comparing yourself to like this version of a drunk person, an alcoholic person.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I'm not that. So like essentially kind of what's the big deal? For a long time, it felt like very much what's the big deal because I'm not as bad as this dude was. Right. So it kind of like tainted your view of what is acceptable and what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I resonated a lot with that idea of like, you think there are certain things that you experienced as a kid or ways that you were disciplined or even just the way that your parents would talk to you sometimes. And then you're like, in your head, you're like, I would never do that. And then I would catch myself, especially when Ollie was, when we were like brand new parents, right? Yeah. Like I had Oliver when I was 24. And I remember a lot of times repeating stuff that my parents would say to me, to Oliver, because I looked at it for a really long time. I looked at my parents and I was like, man, they like really did it right. Like I never got in a lot of trouble. It felt like they steered me away from friendships that like could have caused me a lot of trouble, but they did it in a way that didn't make me like rebel or do anything like that. But then I started looking at other stuff and I don't know if it's fair to necessarily attribute all of that. But for me, working through it on my own, it's just an example. But like my dad would say to me a lot, something along the lines of, hey, you're just talking to talk. Nobody's listening to what you're saying. Or you're the only one listening to you right now. Yeah. And I think that even when we talked about doing this podcast, my immediate thought was, who the fuck wants to hear what I have to say? Yeah. Like, it's not that, nothing that I'm going to say is that important or that revolutionary or whatever. And I'm like, is that a confidence thing? Is that this is a thing my dad said to me for a very long time. But I would catch myself saying that to Ollie when Oliver would just like babble, when he would be like 3 or 4 or 5. And I'm like, bro, nobody's listening to you right now. Can you stop doing that? Mm. And now I try to lean more into when Ollie just wants to like make noise, like sometimes Ollie just wants to fill the space with noise. So they'll sit in the back and whistle or do these things. And now I try to lean more into this language of, hey, are you making noise just to make it? Yeah. Because if you have something to say, I want to hear it. Yeah, but if you're making noise to make it, please stop doing that because I'm overstimulated. But
it is an interesting thing where it is a very hypocritical thing for me because I know that more than likely Oliver got that trait from me.
Yeah.
Because I am very much someone who needs to either be in my own complete silence or I need to fill the silence. And typically it's filling silence. And whether that's music or tapping or talking or fun fact, whatever. And so sometimes it's hard for me to not be hypocritical in telling Ollie, stop it. Because I know like, well, when I'm aware of it, okay, I've been tapping my feet probably for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's a subconscious thing at this point that I move. And sometimes that moving makes noise, especially when we're in the truck or something.
Yeah.
Or the car where I'm tapping on the floorboards.
Yeah.
Always on a table or a computer. I know I'm noisy at work, so I appreciate that those people put up with my shit. And so, yeah, it is I don't know. I have to ride that line between teaching Oliver the social acceptable, like where the boundaries are of like, you can be quirky, you can be weird, you can be noisy and whatever, but you have to also learn when not to.
Right.
I think that's the important part.
Yeah. Or to be able to like read the room and like, are you doing something that's making noise, but it's fine? Or are you actively annoying people? Because I think a lot of times, like, we're pretty good about saying like, hey, that's kind of driving me crazy right now. Can you do something else? Like, I don't expect our kids to be quiet. And I think that for a while there, it felt like my dad would be very like, I need you to shut up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I became very good at just, as soon as he didn't have to say it, give me this look, or we all sit down at the dinner table and I can tell within a matter of 20 seconds, like, are you in a mood where we're all going to talk and have a good time? Or did you have a hard day at work? So we're going to eat quietly and then we're going to get up and, you know what I mean? Like, my dad's mood very much dictated the vibe for the whole night. And I wanted to create the least amount of waves possible once I got to the point where I could read that, you know, like when you're a little kid, you don't fucking know that. You're not, you're 4, 5, 6 years old. You're not looking at your dad and being like, is he mad?
Yeah.
Like, should I really not be annoying? But as I got older, I'm like, oh, nope. I need to shut up. I need to shut up. I need to finish eating and I need to get away from him. Like, he wants me to get away from him right now.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like fine as a parent to like need that time where you just need your kids to go away. But I think that where that has carried over for me now, it's happened the last couple of times we've gone home where we have 3 kids. We have 3 rambunctious kids. And we go to my parents' house and my parents are both retired and live in this like, you know, quiet space. Right. But when we go home, we typically will stay with my parents and our kids are a lot. And I think because we've been so lax with kind of shutting Ollie down whenever Oliver starts to like really act like they know a lot more than they do, you know, or you know, where we've been more lax about it because I feel like, again, that for me, that's a trauma response because I was told a lot that like what I was saying was stupid and I don't want my kids to feel stupid.
We're trying to be more like Oliver, all our kids, eventually they will figure out like, oh, I should probably not be doing this.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
there's no reason to like cut that right now for me. There's no reason to tell Oliver that, man, like that invention would never work.
You are literally not going to make a movie within a week.
Literally.
But we'll let you try.
But yeah, I'm not going to like crush your dream right now. There's no reason to do that. But Ollie will then say those things very confidently to my parents. Yeah. My parents are very much like, well, that's not going to happen. And then Ollie wants to argue because we have created this space where Ollie feels comfortable to like continue a conversation with us, whether we want to have it or not.
Yeah. Ollie's a talker when you get them going.
And my parents, and especially my dad, they're very quick to think that could come off like disrespectfully or like my kids are talking back to them. And so as soon as I pick up the vibe that my kids are annoying my dad at all,
it's like you want to scoop them up and get them out of the room.
I want to scoop them up and get them out of there because that's how I felt I was supposed to react when I was a kid. I need to shut up and leave as soon as possible. And when I say that to my parents, my dad immediately is like, no, I don't want you to go anywhere. What are you talking about? Like, I'm fine. And I think that my dad is a softer person now than he was when I was young. So he is a very different grandparent than he was a parent. And I do think that my dad can handle a lot more now than but my trauma response is what I had as a kid was a dad that would absolutely, like, if we didn't get the hell away from him when he needed us to, he would yell a lot, you know? My dad was never physical with us, you know? Like, I got less than 5 spankings my entire childhood, and I earned those. It wasn't like I was just being annoying that day or something. But like, my dad is an intimidating dude, and he knows it, and he would use that when we were kids to keep us in line. I don't want my kids to be intimidated by me. I don't want them to be afraid of me, because I want them to feel like they can talk to me about whatever they want to talk to me about. Yeah. Or if they're struggling with something, or if they have a great idea. Because I feel like I was told so often that what I was saying was stupid, or that it wouldn't make sense, or these are all the hurdles you would need to go to get over before I could feel like that was a reality for me.
Yeah.
And I tied that into even like, I knew really early on, probably middle school, I wanted to be a lawyer. That felt like a job that I would be really good at.
I think you would be.
I like debating. I feel like I can carry a conversation. I can like help people understand where I'm coming from.
You're really good at finding the like, hold on, but
yeah, yeah. But I feel like I knew immediately the couple of times that I brought it up a little bit, again, middle school age, early high school, it was a little like, okay, like they didn't take that seriously at all. But I knew if I ever came to them in a really real way, like, hey, no, I definitely want to go to law school. The first thing would have been, well, that's really expensive. And then it would have been, you're going to be in school a really long time. And that would be really hard to be a parent and, be with your kids whenever you have all of this work to do. That's a very involved career.
Yeah.
It would have immediately been all of those things instead of, oh my God, I think that could be really cool for you. I think that would be a great career for you. I think that, certain aspects of that would be tough, but you're a great student. You're a good studier. You've always shown whenever you really want to do something, you can do it. Like there wasn't that encouragement. And so now I feel like we almost overcompensate in that arena with Oliver, where it's like, Ollie tells me, yeah, I want to get a movie published on Netflix before I'm 11.
Yeah.
And I'm like, in my adult brain, I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But instead right now, when Ollie says that, I'm like, cool. What are the steps for that?
Yeah.
Or like, you need to write a script. Are you writing a script?
Yeah. Well, I already have one.
Yeah. Like, okay, great. Well, we need to write it out. Do you need help with that? Like, I'm trying to, in my adult brain, I understand my kid is not going to put a movie on Netflix by the time they're 11.
Yeah.
And realistically, I know that Oliver doesn't even have like the work ethic to pull that off,
Not yet, no.
Not yet. But I wouldn't say that to him.
Yeah.
To them. And I feel like I did not, that was a parenting decision that I made very specifically because I did not want my kids to feel the way that I felt anytime that I brought up anything that was outside of like a normal, safe, blue collar, like career. And not that there's anything wrong with those, but I feel like that in my parents' head, that was the thing that would make the most sense.
What do you think your response is? Because now that I'm like just sitting here mulling it over, I feel like I have a similar thing, not with my parents, but for the longest time with my brother. My brother is 5 years older than me. And I always had this complex of wanting to at least be as good as him at whatever, whether it was music, sports, school, whatever. And I always felt like I wasn't. And one specific thing that I'm thinking about is for the longest time, no matter how cool something was that I was, excuse me, so sorry. No matter how cool something was that I was working on, whether it be a piece of art, I used to do vehicle wraps or signs or whatever it was. The first response I would get was a criticism of some kind. And it's like every time I took this chance at showing my brother, like literally like check this out. And then it would be this like quick silence and then just like a look over it. what's this here? There's always like a pick out like one tiny imperfection. I'm like, yeah, I guess that's I guess there's an air bubble I didn't get to. I'll get that in a sec. But like, what do you think about like what I'm showing you?
Yeah.
You know, and we've worked through that, and I think we're on the other side of that. But I do have this complex that I think a lot of, we've talked about this before, but a lot of what I do, there is this, it's never specifically for one thing, but it's like a bunch of puzzle pieces. And I feel like one of the puzzle pieces is trying to please my brother.
Yeah.
And, it's like I want to display my success and my talents and, and he's getting better. I just told you that this past week, my sister recommended, hey, we should finally start that 3-way group chat we've been needing to do. And a few days went by, and so I was like, you know what? Feeling a little saucy. So I just started it. I was like, hey, we're trying to be big on hype with our kids, and especially sibling hype, because, we've talked about, hey, you can choose friends, you can choose your spouses and whatever, but you didn't choose these siblings, and this is your like crew, and you need to do the best that you can do to support, not only like protect, but also support, your fellow brothers here.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know what it's like to feel unsupported as a sibling. And it's still something I'm like working through and struggling with and coping with. Even if it does continue to get better, relationship wise and all that, it'll still, I don't think, ever be the thing I always wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
I look at these, TV shows and movies where brothers are tight.
Yeah.
Or you hear about like the Duplass brothers, who are like, Hollywood writers and have great indie films, and or the Duffer brothers, who have the Stranger Thing. I dream about a world where it's me and my brother conquering the world, because my brother is so fucking smart. Again, Six Sigma certified engineer, scientist. Like, dude can put his mind to it, and he has put his mind to things, just not things involving me.
Yeah.
And I don't even know where we got on this tangent, but
can I tell you?
I see you tearing up over this. I know you want to say something.
This topic, like, legitimately wrecks me.
Yeah.
And sometimes I almost feel bad, because I think that we grew up, our family dynamic was so drastically different. And I think that you were able to think that your situation was fine because that was the one that you knew. And then you come into my family and you see this other dynamic.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's weird. Like, that's different.
I'd never really seen.
And so for me, I have struggled so hard to watch you want a relationship so badly, because you see how close my sister and I are. Like, we are thick as thieves, and we like.
I wanted a friend.
We barely poured into that, but we were talking. My sister's out here visiting right now, and we were talking earlier about just like, I think that you have always really, really wanted a relationship with your brother that you have never had before. So it's like you're constantly trying and trying and trying to get this thing. And I'm not saying this to knock your brother. I think he doesn't get it. Because I don't think that he feels the same like need to have a relationship with a little brother that you're so desperately searching for in your older brother.
Yeah.
And you have this example of my sister and I, and our age difference is literally the same as you and your brother. Yeah. So you see this this relationship and you think, well, why can't I have that? What do I need to do to get that? And the amount of times that I have watched you from the sidelines when you're showing your brother these things that you're doing, or you're like, and I know how desperately you're trying to get that approval, or that like, dude, that's so great. Like, look at you, look at what you're doing, look at what you've done. And it just doesn't feel like you've ever gotten that. And like I found I found the speech that your brother wrote for our wedding.
Where is it at? Is it in my humidor?
Yes. I found it the other day and I read it, and I haven't read that since, he said it at the wedding.
Yeah.
But even reading through that and knowing the difference in your brother's speech versus my sister's speech, your brother's was very like, haha, look at this. It's a joke. My brother's goofy. Look at, haha.
Yeah.
And
I still
think
kept
that,
it though.
But of course you did.
Yeah.
Because it was important to you. It was like this opportunity. And I remember, ew, this is going to suck for me. I remember when Ollie, right before I had Arlo, we had this party for Oliver. You know what I'm going to say. And it was this party to celebrate that like Ollie was going to be an older sibling. And how important that was, and how excited we were. And we wanted to make it this big thing. Like, you're finally going to have a sibling, and you're going to have a brother, and you get to like, and so it was this big like celebration of that before the baby came. We wanted Ollie to feel really special. And we painted up this mailbox, and we had this idea for our family members to come over and like write Oliver a letter with like advice on how to be an older sibling, or how to be a sibling in general. And your sister put a note in there, and my sister put a note in there, and my parents and your parent, like so many people wrote notes. And I remember you being so like excited and interested to see what your brother would write. And he didn't write one. And I remember being so sad for you because I knew how badly you wanted to read it. You wanted that piece of paper that said how important it is to be a brother and how great it is to have one. And he didn't do that. And so I hear you now that like, I know that you and your brother are trying to like mend this relationship and stuff, but I think that for me, I still think that he's lacking. I think that I think you're trying to just like cope with that. And you're trying to almost like convince yourself that he's doing a better job. But I think your brother just doesn't value it the same way as you. And I don't know why. I don't know if he just didn't feel like he was told that was that important as a kid, or like that follow-up once he moved out. I don't know what the reason is. But I see how it has affected you, our entire relationship. And so I'm just like constantly let down. And I think that like, I see you I see you always looking to do these new things. And for a really long time, your brother was like one of the first people that you would like try to call or send a text to like say, hey, I'm doing this new thing, or look at this new thing I'm trying. And a lot of times you were met with like radio silence. And even this podcast, you sent the pilot off to him before this all started, before it went live, and radio silence. And it's like, I think that you're constantly like trying these new things to see if he will finally like give you that, like, damn, dude, that's so cool. Like, look at what you're doing. That's incredible, and like, look at the life you've built for your family. And like, I'm like so proud of you that you have grown to be from this goofy brother that I used to, fucking beat up all the time. Like, you have grown into a really good man and a really good dad and a really good husband. And I'm like just so devastated for you that you aren't receiving that. So I struggle. That's where, again, I've kind of had all of these like, issues and like hard relationships with a lot of people in your family, because I see these things and I'm like, I just want them to love you well and to communicate how proud they are of you and like everything you've overcome and everything you've fought through. to get where we are now. And even along the way, like when we were struggling, it's like, dude, you're still showing up, like the amount of times that I've needed to be able to lean on my sister for support. And I don't know how I would have even like gotten through certain aspects of my life if I hadn't had that from her. And thinking that like you should have had that too. And instead you were often met with like just this lack of care. And I don't know. I felt like even whenever we were like, even when you were telling him, I like need you to care. I need to feel like you care. You were met with like defensiveness and anger. And then we just literally didn't have a relationship for a couple years.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't know. So for me, I hear you. And at the end of the day, I don't think that I'm not trying to like shit on your brother.
Sure.
But I just think that like, for whatever reason, he doesn't value the relationship in the way that you value it. In the way that you have always wanted him to value it, he has never valued it that way. Mm. So it's hard that you want this relationship from someone that you have never had that relationship with them. They have never acted interested enough to like make any sort of time or effort for that.
I struggle with that, I think in general, of yearning for things that I can't actually have. And I think it started with, I don't want to say started, but an early one I can remember is, obviously an affinity for Harry Potter came. I actually got them out of order. It was right when the craze had started, but like a little late. So I got the second book right around Christmas, because I think they came out in November?
Yeah.
And then the movies did too, right?
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, I got this. My first book was the second book. I didn't know that. Even though it said year 2 on the side, I thought that was just like, that's just where the story started. Yeah, whatever. And naive. Whatever. And I think my parents were. Anyway, I think that year my mom got me a copy, and at my dad's house I got a copy too. But I just remember it was this magical. We went to Tennessee somewhere, maybe like Gatlinburg or something.
Your family does like Gatlinburg.
Yeah,
I've never gone to Gatlinburg.
Somewhere where it was like kind of snowy. It was in cabins, and I remember it had like an indoor hot tub, like kind of off the living room.
We have literally done this vacation with your family in Gatlinburg. It's definitely there.
Yeah, same type of thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I don't blame them. I wish I would have spent more time there.
But I remember, man, we got there and I was just so eager to read. And again, like I mentioned at the very beginning, I've always struggled with reading, like physically reading. Not that I can't comprehend it. Obviously, I can comprehend it. It's the act of following a straight line. And then, I don't know, my eyes just like run off course. It's like I can't stay on the bike sometimes.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason with this book, it just entranced me literally, where I was just like, just in it. And I remember it had this kind of lofty thing. I could see the snow out.
Yeah.
And it had come with these really cool early edition art bookmarks with like a little star on. Oh my gosh, I still have those. And it just felt really magical. What was the point I was making with this? Do you remember?
Well, I think it was like yearning for things you can't have.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I was just kind of explaining, or what my early magical days of, and it was this first true escape for me. Mm-hmm. And it was this feeling of, I wish I could have this feeling all the time. And then I got into the movies when they started coming out. And then I would draw duplicate copies of the cover art and hang them on my wall, and clay figurines and hang shit from my ceiling. I wanted my letter to Hogwarts so goddamn bad. To the fact that I'm an adult now, and I have my letter on my arm, held by Dumbledore's rotten hand. Yeah, it was my first true, escapism, And I mean, I do that now. I wish I could meet people who were dead, and I wish I could have careers that there's no way I could be a touring musician for some big famous band now, because I have a family and I don't want that, even though I want that.
Yeah.
You know, and in the same aspect, I want to have a relationship with my brother that never did exist.
Yeah.
And because of that, never can. Whatever we build from here, which again, I do need to like asterisk what we've been saying as of this recording, like, you know, this year we've been texting a little bit on and off, but like you said, sometimes I will say his response to that was that he was actually pretty sick, and so he was real bad about it. So he did. I didn't fill you in on that, but I feel like there is, especially since we tried this 3-way text, there is this effort of like, okay, we're gonna do this, and then if we don't, we don't. You know, I had that conversation with you. We've had this great experiment almost with everybody.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, I'm not saying, I'm just tired of feeling like I'm spinning wheels trying to, specifically in the case of, you know, trying to make relationships work.
Yeah.
I'm just feeling that exhaustion. And I just want to, and that was part of why we took that little break to reset, is like, I'm just going to focus on my therapy and my personal shit that I've got going on. And yeah, deep down we all love each other, but right now we need a break from talking to each other, interacting, and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that was a good reset that we needed, because while there are some disappointments, you know, here or there, or some rocks still in the road, overall, we're not driving through the potholes we used to be.
Yeah.
Some.
Yeah.
But not as many, I guess, you know, and that progress to me is worth something.
Yeah.
And so, but again, it will never be what I wanted. And that is a devastating thing to like have to come to terms with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I feel like another thing you've kind of talked about wanting since we've been together. And again, I think it's just because you have seen it in movies or seen it in TV shows, but you've always wanted like the big family get together at Christmas, where like
I've wanted that since like I was a kid, like
high
school.
Well, that's what I mean. Like you've been saying that to me from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And it was this like, I want to live somewhere, or I want to travel with my family to this place where there's a lot of snow, and we all stay in this like big house, and we play games, and we go sledding, and we build snowmen, and it's this magical, magical thing. And now we live in a space where Christmas is magical. There we get a lot of snow.
Of wildlife.
We have, we've got like 14 deer that come through, you know, like
I'm about to name them. We got deer and turkey that come every damn day.
It's so magical. And we've got great sledding hills, and we're still all like young enough to be able to go down those sledding hills and not feel it for 2 weeks after, you know, like.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of those things where now that we're here, I know we've briefly talked about it, but in my mind, not this year, but I've already kind of talked to Mom about it a little bit. But next year, I want to plan something. And if you don't come, you don't come.
Yeah.
You get the invite. But I was just talking about this, about the concept of, you know, we've played at other people's game nights for so long, is what it feels like anyway. And I'm sure some people listening who are related to us in some way are probably feeling that same way about themselves. That's the complication here.
Yeah.
But it's like, or like with family traditions, or again, Christmas, it's like our oldest is almost 10, and we want to get to the point where it's like, no, we're going to host our own game nights now. And if you want to come play with us,
right,
you're welcome to sit at our table. Yeah. But you're going to play our games now, like, you know. And so that's where, not this year, obviously too soon, but next year I want to plan that.
Yeah.
And I want to give our family, the ones I want to come, ample opportunity to not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To be able to say, like, you have time to plan this.
Yeah.
And if it's not worth it for you to come, or you just can't swing it, then we'll try next year. But you'll get that invite, And that's what it is.
Yeah.
Because it is something that like I have always wanted in my heart.
Well, and I think that's where for me, like my hope with you getting older and like kind of coming to terms with where these relationships are and where they might end up being and where they definitely, aren't going to be.
Yeah.
That like, yeah, everyone's invited, but like if you don't show up, it's not going to taint my time. Or like, I think that for us really focusing on, we're going to make our own traditions with our kids and we're going to pour into that. And we can hope that when we're grandparents, that we can have those big family get-togethers at Christmas that you always wanted, but with our kids and our grandkids, because just because you didn't get that with your family doesn't mean that we can't have it in ours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that like you have focused for so long on these relationships that kind of consistently have just let you down and hurt you. And I think moving forward now, it's like, I need to try to not let this hurt me anymore. You are always invited and I always want you to be part of my life and part of these things, but I can't feel shitty about myself because you don't want to be in it.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like for a really long time, very specifically with your brother, it's like you care more about what he thinks about what you're doing than what your dad thinks about what you're doing. Like it feels like you have really put your brother on
this is an interesting point
this space of like, I need to impress this one.
It's specifically my brother. Yeah, that's like, again, it's a part of it's a puzzle piece. It is a big one.
Yeah, and it feels like because you don't feel like you have been able to impress him to the level that you want to impress him, or that he hasn't expressed to you that he is impressed. I think for a very long time you felt then inherently less impressive. And then you really struggle with this imposter syndrome. Like, am I even this good?
I still do, y'all.
Yeah. But like,
that is so heavy with me.
But like, you are absolutely an impressive person. Like, you are so talented and so smart and so quick and funny and creative and like all of these things that you like can't even teach a person. You are those things. You are somebody that is worth bragging about and worth being impressed by. And I hope that like you're able to see that and move away from like this one person validating me or not validating me does not actually dictate how valuable I am.
Yeah.
Because I think that
it's important. Yeah.
It just feels like that lack of acknowledgement has then made you feel like you're less impressive to everyone. And that's just not the case.
Yeah.
I am very impressed by you all the time. I'm like, how are you so good at so many things?
Thank you.
It's actually infuriating sometimes. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we could wrap it up maybe on a question or two. Depends on how much time we get, just to kind of lighten it up a little. I have it pulled up. Yeah. Okay. Someone wrote in the group asking about how we came up with the names of the kids. And I thought that was a pretty good question.
I remember so desperately wanting to name Oliver Clark. I thought that was the cutest name. I didn't hear it a lot. It felt like an old-timey name, but it wasn't like too like out there. And I just like, there's just something about like Clark. It's like such a,
Clark.
I like how harsh it is. I think it's like borderline hysterical. And the thought of having like a 5-year-old in a kindergarten classroom named Clark was hilarious to me. But you were like, Clark Keith is too much.
Yeah, it
Kate.
sounds like a superhero.
It's too much.
Like a knockoff superhero.
Yeah, the Wish version of Superman. I gotcha.
Right,
I hear you.
Yeah.
So I was devastated that you didn't want that.
Yeah.
And then we toyed around with Henry, but then someone that you were friends with.
There was a few people who named
their kid Henry.
Like,
and it felt like, okay, there's too many like right now.
Yeah.
And then you were a big fan of Oliver.
Yeah.
And I was not, because I loved the name Olive for a girl.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
you
thought,
wanted to
no,
save
if
it.
we have a girl, we can't have an Oliver and an Olive. That's ridiculous.
You could.
Well, we never had a girl, so it doesn't matter. But I finally was like, fine, okay. And then Oliver's name is Oliver Allen Keith, and Allen's my dad's middle name. So that felt like, a way to kind of like shine some light on my dad, because he has dedicated his life to making my sister and I's life, to making our lives better.
Yeah.
My dad skipped out on promotions at work because he wanted to be there for us, for our volleyball games and our softball games. He wrote us notes after all of our games to tell us, how proud he was of us, or like, things that we could work on.
Right.
My dad literally did not take a vacation my entire childhood, with the exception of one, because he wanted to put all of his extra money into college funds for my sister and I.
Yep.
My dad is a construction worker. He worked concrete his whole life. My mom worked customer service for a tool company. They were not well off, but they paid cash for my sister and I's college. That was so important to them.
That was huge.
So it felt like that was a way to kind of honor the sacrifices that my dad made for us. And my parents have been very supportive of us. They've loaned us money when we've needed it. They've like always wanted to lend a hand if we needed it. They've cooked a lot of dinners for us. Like, they've just kind of always been around. So they're like important. And then with Arlo, we found his name. Arlo's full name is Arlo Otto Keith. And we found Arlo and Otto on the war memorial in our hometown.
And plus, we liked how bouncy it was. It's just fun.
Arlo Otto Keith, which is so funny because he is a bouncy little thing. So his name
he's taken the
plays
so
perfectly.
Funny how it seems. Yeah, the middle kid trope is just fitting perfectly. The kid is gonna be a spit fire, man.
Yeah.
I feel like Oliver's gonna be like our smart and reserved. Well, not reserved. That's not the right term. Oliver's still like wild too.
Yeah.
But like more in the Oliver's getting into animation, more nerdy type stuff.
Well, and Oliver is so desperate to be looked at as a grown up,
an intellectual.
Yes. Like, of course I can handle that thing, or of course I can watch that, or of course I can hear you talk about this thing.
Handle that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're 9 years old, so you also don't need to watch that. Thank you. And then with Simon's name is Simon Alexander Keith.
Yeah.
You have asked for Alexander always since Ollie, and I was like, that is a mouthful. I don't want a big first name.
It's because there's a family beer company out of Nova Scotia that is really hard to get in the U.S., but some places apparently can import it for you. We just never pulled the trigger on trying to get that.
Yeah.
But it's called Alexander Keith's, and it has our family stag on it, and so it's like a perfect like family heirloom thing to like have on the shelf.
Remember for me, it was like I would never call him Alexander, and also I thought about the tests, the test where you fill in the bubbles, standardized test.
Yeah.
I'm like,
do you know
how annoying that would be to have to spell out Alexander and then fill out all those bubbles? But we struggled with a first name for Simon for a long time. And then we landed on Simon, I think after we just kind of like went through all the names online and in baby books and stuff. And
I feel like overall so we broke the pattern because Oliver Allen Keith was OAK. And so you got a little acorn.
Yes, that was my first tattoo, was an acorn.
It's bigger than I remembered it, actually.
A little baby oak. I think all my tattoos started to look bigger after I lost some weight.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
It's taking up more real estate now.
And then Arlo Otto was A-OK.
Yes.
And then we broke the chain with Simon.
Also, because I struggle so much with like
theming,
calling Oliver Arlo and Arlo Oliver. Like,
oh yeah,
two names that have the ah sound. We fucked up. Man, we fucked up. So I'm always tripping over it. But also, you really like the show The Mentalist, and the actor from that show.
Oh yeah,
his name was Simon. And once we recognized that, we're like, all right, that's probably a good name.
Yeah, but now I'm gonna say it's for Simon Phillips. one of the other more prolific drummers of Toto.
Sure.
And also just on his own, just fucking insane.
Yeah.
So, I got another. Do you think we got time for another one?
Yeah, let's do one more.
Okay. Would love to hear about your childhood pets. Maybe like one or two that are like stand out to you.
Yeah.
So you go ahead and start.
Okay. First one I want to talk about was Jasmine the cat. My parents got Jasmine when I was 10. It was like the summer after I had turned 10. And she was a Siamese cat, and she put up with my shit. I loved that cat so much. I would put like my Barbie backpacks like on her. We've got pictures of her with those backpacks on. If you'd be like, Jasmine the cat, she'd meow. Like she would every time, no matter what. And then she also would literally play fetch with you.
Yeah.
She would go get the ball, bring it back. I loved that cat.
Yeah.
And then my sister very much did not love that cat. And I remember we had a Bates family court because my sister wanted to get rid of the cat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how dare you? I love this cat. Yeah. And so we presented our cases. Wonder why I wanted to be an attorney. I'm playing one.
Yeah.
And my sister drew these pencil drawings of the cat, like where the cat had scratched my like chest. And like she put up this just whole debate about it. My parents, of course, did not get rid of the cat. They like wouldn't have done that. But when Jasmine died, because she got like cat leukemia, I was a wreck.
Yeah.
I buried that cat wrapped up in my baby blanket. We had a cat funeral, and my sister did not come to the cat funeral. And I remember I was so mad at her. And I very specifically walking in there to let her know that I could not believe that she didn't come to this cat's funeral. And she was watching Jerry Springer and said that she didn't care.
Wow. She's written out of the will.
Bro, couldn't believe that.
I remember I have a few actually I want to get to, so I'll try to keep them brief. We had a pug named Fancy. That was my mom's like darling that I could. That's the one that.
What a silly little name.
Oh yeah, she's a queen. Just.
Oh
yeah. I mean, she had all the deviated septum stuff, and just good old chubby pug.
When I think of a royal dog, pug comes to mind.
Absolutely, queen. And then at my dad's house, we had a dog for the longest time named Max, and he was a giant Great Dane. I mean, he was bigger than a Great Dane. He was a Great Dane. My dad would do this thing. He's an outside dog because he had this giant doghouse. It was like, imagine a doghouse and then literally like triple it. It was fucking
it's like a shed.
It really was. It was like a shed because this dog was so fucking huge.
Yeah.
And we would put him out on the line. He was white with black spots. And my dad would do this thing where he would, uppies, where he would tap his collarbone basically, and the dog would just these meaty paws.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And when he did that, he would stand like significantly taller than my dad. Like this dude was a horse.
Oh yeah.
And then one thing about that dog, I remember I picked him up from a place over in Bloomington, over by your mom's work.
Yep.
And it was this weird, and now looking back, totally makes sense with my personality and my ADHD, all that good stuff. But and I'm not kidding you, every time we drove by that place, probably until I was like in college, and I was like, okay, I gotta stop.
Yeah, you absolutely did it with
me. I
literally
literally would pass by that and I go, hey, there's Max's old house.
Yeah.
That's how I would have to say it. Like, hey, there's Max's old house. I don't know how many hundreds of times I've probably said that in my life, but it is this weird compulsion of like, I have to say that.
Which by the time we were dating, your dad didn't have that dog anymore. So I'm like, who the fuck is Max?
No, like he'd been dead for years and years. But it was just this like thing that I always said when I passed this certain house. Yeah.
The other one for me, also a cat, which is funny because I'm not actually a cat person. I prefer dogs. But we had this cat that I named Jake, and the quirky, funny thing about Jake was that my parents lived in, they still live in a house that once was a one-room schoolhouse, and then
it's really cool.
It is very cool. And then when they bought it. You know, somebody had like split it into rooms or whatever to make it a house.
Yeah.
But it's old. So like we would have mice, you know, mice would get in. Jake the cat would catch the mice and then drown the mice in its water bowl.
Yeah.
And then would either leave them to be found in that way, or this nasty little shit would then bring the sopping wet dead mouse.
Good Lord.
And drop it on our pillows while we were sleeping. Like, look what I've done. Look what I did for you.
Oh, I can't imagine rolling over.
Oh. No, I was like awakened by a wet dead mouse. Was like right on my head. You know? Oh man, it was awful. But like, you know, he was doing it. But it's also like, what kind of psychotic cat literally just drowns these mice and then doesn't eat it? Never.
Wow.
Never went that far. Just
disgusting.
Murdered them.
And then, we had a lot of German Shepherds growing up, and then just a lot of like shop dogs that Darren would take back and forth to the mechanic shop or whatever. But I'll mention one more dog, and that was when I was in middle school when my mom divorced and we moved to that Gosport house where it was just me, my mom, and then, you know, my sister occasionally, because she was splitting time between my mom and then her stepdad's house or her dad's house.
Yeah.
That we went to the Humane Society and went and picked out he was a Rhodesian Ridgeback. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I got a picture of him up there. I'll have to like take a picture and post it. Yeah. He was abused, and it was very clear that he was abused. He was like, you know, sitting in the back corner of actually we went twice. The first time I had seen him and then thought I was going to go with another dog. And then I just sat on it. I was like, I don't know. And then one of my buddies was like, I think you should go with that other dog. And so I did, because it was like, we had just moved. It was 7th grade. And my mom said I could buy one. I could go get my own dog finally. Like my Logan's dog.
Yeah.
And so we went back the next day. I picked him up. His name was Sebastian, I think. But I renamed him. Actually, I renamed him to Archie for like 3 days or something. I was like, I don't know about that. And then so I renamed him to Gibson.
Yeah.
And then just Gibby for short. And man, that dude, he really did help me with that transition of going from living in my childhood home to now living in a new home in a whole new, no, it wasn't whole new, but a new house, new city, and town. This
Gosport.
Fucking tiny ass town. I shouldn't say city. But I remember, just being in my room, and it was just literally me and Gibby.
Yeah.
He would slip through the day. He would sleep on my little futon pull-out thing, and then just wait for me to get home, and we'd watch TV, do my homework, play drums.
Yeah.
Didn't matter. That was my home boy. And when he passed away, that hit me harder than, listen.
Yeah.
It probably hit me harder than any like friend or family that's ever passed away.
That was so sad. I feel like you and Gibson were like truly like little twin flames. Like y'all were really thick as thieves. Like just too. Yeah, like as much comfort as he gave you, you gave him that too. And he was just such a good dog. We had Gibson up until you were 20 when Gibson died.
Yeah.
And so we were living together, and it was so sad because it felt like it came on so quick. That he it felt like all of a sudden he was very thin, like out of nowhere, really thin. And then we just found out that he was, sick, and there wasn't a lot we could do.
Thyroid cancer.
Yeah. And then he just died really fast.
Within like a week or two.
Yeah. We had made the appointment
to put him
down on like a Monday. We were going to have him put down on a Monday. But I think he ended up dying like Saturday night or something.
Didn't make it through the weekend.
Oh, it was awful. It was so sad. And I felt so terrible. When we woke up on that Sunday morning and you told me that he had died.
Yeah.
I couldn't look at him. I had my mom come and pick me up. And it was like, as much as I knew you were like crushed, I knew it was harder for you than it was for me.
Yeah.
But for me, I was like, I literally, I can't look at him. I can't see him like that. I can't be part of it. And I felt terrible because then you loaded him up yourself. You drove him all the way out to your grandpa's. You dug the hole. You buried him. And I was not part of that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I still, almost a decade and a half later, I feel terrible because I know that was so hard for you.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, I had, obviously had pets, lost pets, but that hit so different for me. And I loved Gibson, but it hit so different for me because I knew what it did to you. And I was like, I don't even know. Like, I have to get out of here.
Yeah.
So
it was a tough
very
one.
sorry for that,
Yeah.
that I was not part of that, because I'm sure you would have preferred that I would have been part of that.
In another sense, though, it was kind of nice that, obviously you love the dog too, but he was my dog.
Yeah.
So there was this other sense of like, I had this quiet to process it because I had the whole drive over there.
Yeah.
And I don't recall crying until probably that night, I think, or the very next morning.
Yeah. It was a hard couple of days after that.
I remember like after he was buried, just standing there and be like, I should be crying right now. But I was still in shock, I think.
Yeah.
Of like, fuck, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't mean to turn that one south. Should we just do one quick little more? Here, this one's stupid. Someone asked, like, what are my favorite? It said not deep. What's your favorite rolling papers?
Oh my god.
Or method, vape, joint, bong, edible. Okay, so here's the thing. This will be maybe kind of positive.
Yeah.
So when I first started smoking, I would use just like a pipe, which I still have every now and again. But then for ease of, use, whatever, I switched to the vape carts so I could basically smoke at work and on the go and just have it on me basically at all times, discreet, all that good shit.
Well, when we first moved out here, I was like, no, you should try edibles. You should try those.
Oh, yeah.
And then when we talked about your high tolerance on the last episode.
Yes.
When I say you could put down literally a whole bag of edibles and be like, and be super fine. Like you would feel it at that point, but like,
I'd feel it in my eyes and my face. And
but like you were totally fine to
I could manage.
Hang. I remember I did two.
What are you talking about when we went to that mine? Do you remember that?
Oh my God.
Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
Yeah. So I don't remember how many you took. I don't know. Was it one or two?
I think I took two before that.
Okay.
And I know better because I don't have a high tolerance because I don't partake.
You took
very often.
So you took a little bit of a candy bar, I believe it was, and I had, and then we had another package. It was usually 10 milligram little bites, 100 milligrams per the package or whatever.
Yeah.
So I eat the whole package, and then I'm pretty sure I ate more than half. So basically the rest of your candy bar.
Yeah.
So probably 180 milligrams.
Oh my God.
So nearly 2 bags.
It was nuts.
And then we went on down into the mines with Oliver and your sister to see how fun it was. And then, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes in, you're the one freaking out.
Well, we had Arlo too. This was for my 30th birthday.
Yeah. Okay.
We took a trip to Denver and we had all of us, and my sister went too so that she could, we like to travel with another adult so that we can also hang out without the kids.
Sure.
And yeah, we went down into this mine because it was one where like they would like give they would give Oliver a little pickaxe and like let Ollie have a mining experience. So it was supposed to be this really cool thing, but then also take us down to the mine. Well, we get down there and we're walking and there's a guy in front of us and then a guy in the back. Or no, there was no guy in the back. I'm sorry. There was a guy in the front. We're walking down in the mines and I get to this place where I'm like, I'm certain.
And he's going to kill us.
Somebody's going to come running up behind us and we're all dead. Oh my God, bro. I swear I could feel it. And I got so freaked out. I turned around to my sister, and my sister is not somebody that partakes in weed at all.
Not at all. No.
At all. So I think she was annoyed we were even high, that I was even high at all. But I turned around, I was like, I have got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Like,
I was in a great spot. So I was like, all right, you guys go. See ya.
Yeah. So then you and Ollie go. And then literally my sister and I are sitting in the car and I'm like, hey, it's taking a long time. Like, at what point do we need to like call the cops?
Oh no.
Like, I thought they had just killed you then. Like, I was so freaked out. So yeah, you have an insanely high tolerance.
Yeah.
So we stopped buying edibles.
Yeah.
Because I can't even fucking handle them. And you can house a whole package and it's just not worth it. So yeah.
So then I moved to the carts because, again, my work is, I'm able to keep my shit within reason as long as I do the shit that I always do, which is a good job. Yeah. And so it's never been a problem. So but for me, I've gotten to this point lately where I don't know, I'm just not feeling the daily use of carts anymore. Like, I'll go back to them, for occasions where I do need to be discreet. Like tonight, I went and got one because, we were going to the movie theater and out at the mall and walking around or whatever. I don't want to be, lighting up a pipe or whatever. But I have largely cut those out of my routine, and now I am smoking joints.
Yes.
Every day. And my favorite, I don't know, rolling paper right now is the Blazy Susans, which are pretty cool. The little pink ones.
Yeah.
Kind of retro look.
They're cute.
Those are cute.
I love a cute rolling paper.
Obviously zigzags. I'm not into the king size ones really anymore, which is like, the big ones.
Yeah.
Just the way they smoke down. And I'm also not into the tiny, tiny dog walkers either. I like kind of right in the middle, the 1 1/4, just a good, smoke break, and a little extra dog walk. So that's what I'm into right now.
Are cute.
They are cute.
The first time you bought a little package of those, I had never seen that before.
Yeah.
And like, those are sweet. Like little
My
minis.
problem with
those
little minis are usually, on my light ups, there's a couple puffs where you waste a little bit.
Yeah.
And then usually once I get down to that last little like 1/4 inch, I don't like to smoke that anyway, just because all the tar and crap has passed through there that I feel like I don't need that. So I'll just pinch that out. And so those little dog walkers, it's only like great. That was 2 minutes of fun. So
yeah,
I feel like I've landed on that good 1 1/4 size.
Yeah, but if you had to recommend, it's the Blazy Susan.
Blazy Susans for now. I've got some new ones coming on the way. I can't remember what they were called, but I just got them off of Amazon.
Yeah, give them a try.
Yeah,
if you're a weed smoker.
Well, I think that's a good place to probably end it.
Great. If you haven't joined the Facebook group, we'd love to see you in there.
Yeah, it's really fun so far. Some people are getting in there and, talking about the episodes, mentioning how they've resonated with certain things we've said. I'm really enjoying that part because I do want to be clear. I don't want it to, maybe I said this last time, but just in case I didn't, I don't want it to necessarily be a place for you and I to just dump out all of our photos and personal stuff. I want it to be a place more of like you guys like kind of take it over. I mean, obviously we'll be in there too, but I don't want it just to be the Logan and Kate show in there.
Yeah, we're spilling all our shit here, so y'all can fill us in on what you got going on in there.
Yeah.
But also, if you want to fill us in on your shit in our inbox, you can send that over to mylife at brokenyouthclub.com. We've got the phone number that'll be at the end of the show, 509 something. Let us know.
We're going to get a sign to put up in the corner with all this stuff so we don't stumble over it.
Yeah, we should have you come up with a jingle. We were talking about like great jingles the other day. You should come up with a jingle.
Okay.
You are
like a 90s radio commercial.
Yeah.
Bab Super Value is working for you.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. And then my little last thing, a little shameless self-promotion. Apple Podcasts and Spotify reviews and shares are huge for us. So if you haven't yet, go leave us a 5-star review. That is big, big, big.
Yes.
For early podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being here. We care so much about you. We're so happy you're here. And we'll see you next week.
All right. We'll see you guys.
Okay, love you. Bye.